Hello everybody and welcome back to the main action of the Shanghai Masters as we now approach the quarter-final stage featuring the world champion of 2010 versus the world champion of 2025. It is the world number 2 against the world number 3. It is Australia against China. It is Zhao against Neil Robertson. Once again, the repeat of the Riyadh Championship final, the only final so far that Neil Robertson and Zhao have played against each other. They have met a couple of times after that as well in the Championship League, but ultimately you only have 4 noticeable matches in between themselves, and probably you have to say the biggest one is of course the Riyadh Championship final, certainly in terms of prize money, but also you have to say, apart from the Championship League, there only have been 2 more places for the players to meet, as I say, in Saudi Arabia last season, and then of course 6 seasons ago at the English Open of the last 32, where Zhao was able to win 4 frames to 0 before eventually losing out to David Gilbert by 3 frames to 4. So very interesting to see the way that this is going to go, because of if you look at the history of the 2 players and what they've done in the previous rounds, and Zhao was able to have a very dominant start to the match against Ding Junhui and led the Chinese compatriot by 5 frames to 0. Before Ding eventually managed to finally get a little bit of form together, get himself through that opening stage of the second mini session, and in the end making back-to-back centuries. Didn't really help his cause to try and win that match, and Zhao has managed to win 4th match in a row against Ding Junhui by 6 frames to 2, and Robertson respectively had a very interesting match against Zhao. You have to say he didn't play well at all in the opening part of it, but after being 2-5 down and having to win 4 frames on the bounce, you also have to give him an awful lot of credit. He has managed to steady the ship really nicely, and if you treat every single one of those 4 remaining frames that he was able to get out of that match, you have to say he probably was in charge and was in control of every single one of those matches. So I don't really think, Zhao had too many of those opportunities to get away from him in either one of those frames, apart from maybe the decider where he was putting Robertson under a little bit of trouble, but in the end, Neil was able to prevail and now moves himself towards another quarter-final appearance as we now potentially approach the battle for the world number 1 spot. Robertson is certainly not going to be new to that area. But in relation to Zhao, of course, after his return to the World Snooker Tour, before that, of course, he was having the ranking of the world number 10 as his highest. And it's very similar when he managed to win the World Championship as well in 2025 after his return. And ever since that stage, of course, he didn't have any ranking points to lose. And that will be very much the case until we get towards the Crucible this season, where of course you'll have 500,000 worth of ranking points to defend. So, similar story for Neil Robertson. He's going to lose out inevitably on 500,000 worth of ranking points when we get to the start of the next season, because of Saudi Masters no longer being in the play, and Robertson winning that tournament last season against Ronnie O'Sullivan in a thrilling decider. But for now, he will be all down to the sporting integrity, trying to win a title, and then of course having prize money in a little bit of mind as well. Zhao against Neil Robertson is going to be played on table number 1, and on table number 2 we are going to have Karen Wilson against Mark Williams. So another probably heavyweight battle, you have to say. All 8 seeds have managed to beat the lower ranked players when it comes down to the previous couple of rounds. Wilson was able to defeat Ronnie O'Sullivan, whereas Mark Williams came the better of Chris Wakelin as well. So ultimately, the pairings are going to be very interesting for you to look out for, because eventually this is going to be the top part of the draw, and the winner of Zhao match against Neil Robertson will play either Karen Wilson or Mark Williams in the semi-finals. The semi-finals in Shanghai are going to be 1st to 10. So they're going to be spread out very much across 2 days. So the first semi-final to be played on the Friday, which is going to be tomorrow. It's consisting of 2 sessions, the afternoon and the evening one in China. But of course in Europe it's going to be very much classified as the morning and the afternoon as well. And then the second semi-final will be there to follow on Saturday as we prepare to welcome the players onto the main arena. So far, so good in relation to the performances from every single one of the players. Plenty of breaks, plenty of chances that we've seen. And now, who's it going to be with a very positive start? Probably the start that Neil Robertson needs a little bit more than Zhao Xington, because we have seen Xington to be clinical in those, important opportunities. Hello guys, hello Rapture. But, you also do have to say, if Robertson was to get a couple of frames potentially on the board, then it could still be a very different story from what we've seen against Ding Zhuyi, because in relation to that particular match, you do have to say it was very much down to Zhao Xington not having any pressure at all, and even though he has lost out those 2 frames in a bounce, you can't really say that he made too many of those errors in those particular 2 frames, so it was just a bad break-off in the 7th frame, and a bad use of the ball in hand that he had to try and take the red into the right part of the table. And then Ding finally managed to step to the table and make those 2 century breaks that he would be looking for. As we now get to the action here. But ultimately, you still have to say, as we welcome the referee of the Peggy Lee on towards the main stage here of Zhao Xington against Mark Williams match. Zhao Xington against Neil Robertson, I should say. It'll be very interesting to also realise what sort of answer is Zhao Xington going to be. Is he going to try and play this match in exactly the same way as he has against, his compatriot of Ding Zhuyi, or is it going to be a little bit more of him trying to be on the front foot, as we now welcome Zhao Xington? Not too many matches where he's going to be the first one to emerge onto the arena as the lower ranking, but of course that's going to be the case here against Neil Robertson. It is now going to be very much back to the white shirt there for the world champion of 2025, as we still have 2 more players from China very much approaching to be one of the favourites here. You have to say, Long is going to be in the mix as well. Or of course, he was, until Sean Murphy had something to say about that. But Weezer is still going to be another player looking to try and make it all Chinese final, and at least get one of those Chinese players on towards the final stage of the Shanghai Masters. We haven't seen that since 8 years ago. You have to say, as Neil Robertson now makes his way on towards the arena. Robertson is getting increasingly difficult to beat. Yeah, but you probably have to say, it's only been 1 match, and neither one of the players have had a particularly good end to the season, I would say. Zhao Xington, of course, I'm talking about the Crucible. Zhao Xington had a brilliant Tour Championship, probably the most dominant tournament of anyone in the last season. But, when it comes down to the Crucible, as we see there, seems like Zhao Xington has won the toss, and, he's going to be the player to break off, it would seem. But, yeah, you probably have to say it is a little bit early to be saying that one of them is getting that form into the right place, but at the same time, purely on the stat-wise, you have to say Zhao Xington is going to be the favourite, and, arguably the hardest win on a potential way for Robertson to try and get Shanghai Masters on the board ahead of him trying to return to the China Open as the defending champion, even though, of course, the latest tournament in China Open was held in 2019. Now they're just waiting for Williams and Wilson to be introduced on the other part of the arena. And then we're going to get underway here with Zhao Xington ready to break off. And another thing, of course, we have seen from the likes of Karen Wilson and Mark Williams, whether that's going to be down to the table playing a little bit generous in relation to the pockets and in relation to trying to go for those, pot success chances. But you do also have to say, it will be down to how many of those shots that you're actually going to take on at the starting phase of the match you're going to be able to sort of maintain the pace of and get yourself lined up with in the 2nd and 3rd frame. So once again, that's going to be down to momentum, but ultimately it will also be down to a decent opportunity for Zhao Xington and Neil Robertson to get themselves on the board. And then, of course, it's going to be down to the short selections as well, as we now see Zhao Xington ready to break off, something that he did struggle with yesterday. So it's going to be interesting to see the way that he approaches this part of the snooker game. And he has approached that one really, really well, getting himself lined up with the cue ball to be onto the ball cushion. So only one of those reds that Robertson can probably see This is the same red that he can try and go for into the corner. And something that we have seen of Robertson, it's a brilliant long red. And once again, even though it looked like Zhao Ziton has managed to do exactly what he had to off the break-off, it still allowed Robertson to get that opening chance. And now, even though he's going to be a little bit low on the black, he gets himself an early opportunity to try and make things right here. Although he doesn't want to overcut the black, and he has done. A bit of an unforced error there from Neil, even though he was slightly lower on the black than he would have liked. But still, should have taken more care of that one. And now, the red that he's allowed to be positioned towards the blue ball line is now going to be, well, probably taken by Zhao Ziton as he gets super close to the green, but ultimately misses out on it. And now it'll be interesting to see if he does go for the black and just try and absolutely send the cue ball with all the pace that he's got in his hands into the reds. And that's what he's tried. He got underneath them though, but he has got a little bit of good spin to help him out as well. So then, he's managed to separate the reds away from each other, but ultimately you have to ask on, does he actually have an opportunity, apart from a long red, to be taken into the green pocket, which is going to be far from an ideal shot to be taking on. There's a warm-up there, but yeah, once again, it does seem like a very similar position to a blue ball shootout, but of course, the cue ball is still so far away from the red. I mean, he can potentially consider to be heading for the red into the right corner with a thin cut. Probably the alternative to the cut that Robertson was taking on with the black. But, you know, he is a specialist in those long-range shots, but it's not going to be today, or at least not yet, because that red is going to wobble and he's going to jump out of that green pocket. So then, Robertson is going to come back to the table a little bit too straight there, the cueing from Zhao Ziton, and it'll be very much down to an opportunity for Neil Robertson now to get the things together. But of course, Zhao Ziton was leaving that cue ball for the blue, which means that Robertson is going to have to go for a mid-range shot here, and he's missed it, so which was a little bit surprising. You know, he has played that cue ball across the table clearly for the black, but trying to get in behind the black there as well, because we were missing out on that red by quite a bit of a margin. He wasn't able to get anywhere near that position on the black, and of course that would have compromised the chances of Zhao Ziton to be getting an opportunity to score some points here without having to play a safety shot. But it's an interesting shot selection from a safety, but once again, can't say that was a good one. Although, I mean, the red that he's sort of played towards the yellow pocket has bounced away from it quite far, clearly trying to get that cue ball in behind the black, but in the end, sending the white to go sideways in towards the black itself, rather than trying to sneak in behind of it. And yeah, that's the result that Robertson is going to have to deal with here. And yeah, his decision is going to be just trying to take another one of those reds away from the left side cushion. Although, I mean, once again, just like it was with Zhao Ziton there, the latest couple of centimeters of travelling there from the red probably saved Robertson from giving away a chance here to Ziton. And ultimately, he'll be back down to Zhao here to try and have a little look in relation to what's going to happen here. He is having a good look at the red to be taken into the left middle, but because he's going to have to cue this one with plenty of backspin on the white. And in the end, it was a little bit opportunistic there for him, but at the same time, doesn't feel like he's left an awful lot there for Neil Robertson. In fact, I'm not sure he's left anything at all because of those reds just getting in the way of each other. Nothing towards the left middle that we can see, but also you've got the red to be taken in towards the green pocket as a chance, but at this stage, he's probably not going to be able to see enough of it. So then just a safety shot to be played, but in the end, well, it's a very interesting safety shot, I have to say, because even though he got the perfect positioning on the cue ball, he has still put two of those reds to be over the pocket. One basically as the extension of the middle pocket, and the other one, the actual target there for Zhao Ziton to get in the position. Looking ever so nicely there, just needs to get this red in, and then it will be all down to Zhao Ziton trying to steal the show here in the opening frame and make sure that his second chance of scoring points is going to be better than the first one. Even though you have to say probably was through no fault of his own, it was just the specifics of the position that he found himself with. But in relation to the actual outcome. Nobody cares about the excuses, and he's certainly not going to have plenty of those here. He's got a wonderful position ahead of himself. He's got plenty of variety, either on top end or the bottom end of the table here, with all 6 colours to be available. Plenty of good reds, which of course will take him over the finish line should he put at least, majority of the ones that he's got ahead of himself and available, with him getting through to 19 points of a lead and having 115 points still at the table to play with. As you would expect, he's trying to go for the black ball spot to be playing those shots around and carefully just making his way through those points to be scored. Another 4 reds after this black that he's about to put into the right corner, which he has done. And you take those 4 reds with a black, that's 32 points to be added to 28 that he already has. And all of a sudden, it's now going to be very much back down to 60 points there for Zhao Xington, and putting him very much towards the finish line of getting over and getting this frame over and done with. So just having a minor contact with another red to be taken towards the left corner, which he's about to take full control of, making sure that the reds on the left-hand side of the pink is going to be all down to being available to the left corner. From here on, it's who has better safety, so gets a long pot to start a big break and ultimately who makes fewer mistakes. Well, obviously, I think you've explained the battle and the whole purpose of playing a snooker match, but ultimately I would say he will be, for me, he won't really be down to those long-range shots. I think we're going to see very few safeties, so I think he will be, just like it was in the match against Zhao and Neil Robertson, and Zhao Xington against Ding Zhuyi as well. I think it will be all down to when you get those chances, because both of the players will get them, and we've seen that in this particular frame as well. Robertson was getting at least 2 of those chances, but he's only been able to score a single point out of them. And in the end, with Zhao Xington getting the 3rd opportunity there, you have to say, he's now been able to put a little bit of distance in between himself and his opponent, with now 43 points of the break. I think it will be very much coming down to whoever makes the fewer of those mistakes. Half mistakes is all it takes. Yeah, but you feel like, we've seen that today already, with Zhao Xington making a couple of those mistakes, which weren't really unforced errors, and they weren't really leaving anything on the plate there for Robertson, and he wasn't able to take it. Probably the same point can be made about Zhao Xington, where he was going for those aggressive shots at the opening part of the frame. So sometimes you always feel like in snooker, especially on the professional level, getting those opportunities ahead of your opponent is going to be one of, if not the most difficult thing for you to do. And once you've done it, it's going to be a lot easier for you once you've actually got in and monster reds, and that's exactly what happened here with Zhao Xington. As he now gets himself lined up with a frame ball, all of a sudden, 53 points of the break. He's made a break of 50 plus in every single one of those opening 5 frames against Ding Zhuyi, before eventually leaving Ding to make 2 centuries, before Zhao Xington was able to close the match off with a brilliant century break of his own. Now they're just having a look to see what's going to happen here in relation to the century break as well, because he has got a break of 59 points, and he's now about to have the exact same number ahead of himself as he puts one of those reds, gets it down to 51 points, but ultimately still having plenty more of those points to try and work with, but in the end trying to eke out a gap on the black there, trying to get himself an angle to cannon into the reds. He was, it's going to be very difficult for him to try and pot the black, but at the same time get that contact that he wanted on the reds. Neil Robertson is not going to try and persuade him into this particular frame, so now it's going to be Zhao Xington to take a lead against Neil Robertson on table 2. And a very quick start there for Zhao Xington, even though he wasn't quite a century break. It was still a very impressive break of 60 points out there. And once again, it was just one little mistake at the end from Robertson, allowing Zhao Xington to have those 2 reds over the left middle, utilising both of them in the end to get one of those reds in. And, the break of 59 points after that has followed, adding up to a total of 60. And even though he's missed out on the black, he's still going to be very happy with the way that he's got the result in this first frame. As we now have a very brief look to have just a quick check on what's going to happen with Karen Wilson and Mark Williams. And who also for now is the man at the table. As you can see, there was a mistake from Mark Williams previously, trying to cut the red into the corner. In the end, ended up overcutting that one, but in the end, Wilson responds with another mistake of his. Something that we haven't really seen from Kyron in his match against Ronnie O'Sullivan, but because we've seen plenty of that against Chris Wakelin from the point of view of Mark Williams. So we're going to have to see. Okay, frame 2 up next in 30 seconds. It is true, but ultimately we'll also be down to see on what's going to happen there in between, these couple of first frames, because if it's going to be all of the same there, and we're just going to see, Zhao Xingtong struggle to a certain extent, and then he'll be all down to Neil Robertson to try and get himself a little bit of momentum, then, it could still be a very different situation there for him to find himself with. But at the end stage, it is still Zhao Xingtong with a lead, and Trump seems to have the touch probably 10 years later than Ronnie, 10 years earlier than Ronnie. So we're going to have to wait and see, because Trump, had a bit of a quiet season last year, and he's had a very interesting way of actually ending up their championship, because even though he's made it to the final of the Tour Championship, to the semi-final of the Players Championship, and, was one of the favourites, as he always is, for the Crucible, but, he got absolutely thrashed by Zhao Xingtong. He got absolutely schooled by Hossein Nafai in probably the best performance at the Crucible, personally, from my point of view, individually per player. And then, he didn't really have the response to that John Higgins trying to unload a revenge on him for what happened in the Masters. But it's a very aggressive break-off shot there. I mean, we've seen Robertson to be very praiseful of the shot that Sean Murphy has invented with a break-off, but at the end stage, don't really think that was the technique that Murphy was using. And if it was, then clearly it didn't work out to the full extent. And now there's going to be a red available for Zhao Xingtong, but he's going to miss out on this one. So then Robertson gets another chance to get back to the table. But the question is, does he have any easy reds to try and get himself started here? Because Zhao Xingtong probably would have, seen himself and his fans to be expecting him to get this red in. But in the end, that wasn't quite the result. And even though he got a perfect positioning on the pink, it's not really going to help him if you don't make the red into the corner. And now Robertson just having a look to see if he can get through to the red in between the pink and the pack there. But if the answer is no, I'm afraid he's going to have to play a safety shot here. He is getting a rest out, which probably suggests that I'm wrong, because I think that he's not really going to play a safety shot and leave the red to be at the top end of the table, because of course, that'll get the frame to be in a very likely stalemate, but ultimately will also get him deprived of any advantage here. So he's clearly thinking about trying to go for an attacking shot, and maybe the red underneath the pack will actually go. It's not an easy cut for him to execute, especially with the rest, but well, that's a rookie error. He's underhit that one by an absolute mile. The red is nowhere near the pocket, and I'll tell you what, it's so far away from the pocket that because Zhao Xingtong is not going to be able to see that red because of how Robertson played that shot trying to get on the black. It looks like a genius safety shot, I have to say, to the extent that I'm probably actually going to start thinking that it may have actually been a safety shot, but probably very unlikely. Robertson to be risking so much just to play a safety, which is not really going to get him anywhere. Because the thing that I said about Robertson trying to just get rid of that red at the top end of the table, well, that's something that Zhao Xingtong is very likely to achieve right now. As he plays that red towards the left side cushion, make sure that he's going to plant the cue ball nicely onto the ball cushion as well, and get himself through to a chance in relation to this particular frame after having that costly mistake to get us underway. Now then, Robertson just having a very brief look to see what's actually going to happen here with him. But in relation to this particular match, you have to probably put it down to him not just, not backing himself too much, playing that shot with a lot more power, trying to get that cue ball across to the top end of the table. For now, he's played a really nice safety shot here in relation to the cue ball positioning. But once again, it's getting more and more reds to be closer to the left corner. Now, Zhao Xingtong is going to be the player looking to try and pot that red into the left corner. So then just having a very brief look at that red, and in the end still having to go for a very thin cut on the red. Now then just trying to play that one with plenty of power, and it needs to try and avoid the contact on the yellow. He didn't do that, but in the end, if the pin goes into the right corner, it'll be all down to the plan for Zhao, and you know, ever since he was unable to make that red into the left corner, he's now seemingly has managed to make up for that nicely, and still as he was last time around, playing for the pink, whether he was down to that leg kiss or not. Certainly gets himself in a very fascinating position here to be looking at, because even though he's got the black to be very much compromised, and a huge bunch up on the pink spot will probably face the pink to be respotted at the brown spot. So still very interesting to witness on what's going to happen now with the cue ball to be taking on the red into the left corner, and straight away trying to play for the black here, which, you know, is probably inevitable. You can't really say that it was a smart shot here or not, because the black is going to be probably trying to avoid its own spot there because of it not being available, since those reds are going to get into play. But at the same time, you just had to try and force that cue ball to be heading far away from the reds and closer towards the blue ball line. Still doesn't seem like he's going to be amazed with what he's going to get ahead of himself. So then interesting to see, you know, Zhao not even trying to go for the blue there, which for me would have been a lot more logical, because since he had that black to be available to be taken on into the right corner now, I feel like the story may be different. If the black goes into the corner now, it's very unlikely to have any problems in this break, but ultimately if it doesn't, and he didn't, because he had to play for the blue, and in the end problems start here for him. And very interesting to see what's going to happen now with Neil Robertson, because now he's going to have exactly the same position ahead of himself, and Zhao is trying to force that red a little bit too much, and he will be a break of 15 points, which leaves Neil Robertson now with a chance to try and score some points of his own out there. So then looking to cut the red into the left corner and make sure he's going to be very much the player to get himself underway, but in the end, that is not the way for you to try and get a little bit of form, and it's going to be 4 foul points to be given away for Zhao, and yeah, he didn't have too many of those against Ding Zhou yesterday. And of course, the only point that I can remember of a foul that he was given away was the cue ball to find the target of the green pocket. And this time around, the cue ball is going to find the target of the right middle after a very thin cut. Always, you know, little control over those type of shots because of how much power there was put into that particular effort. But in the end, it doesn't really matter how you get there. What really does matter is that now Zhao finds himself 20 points clear, despite a very significant mistake that he's made earlier in the frame. You know, he's now going to try and send the cue ball into the reds, and I'm pretty sure he's about to get the perfect reward for that courage. And look at that, the pink is about to return back into its own spot as well, and he just managed to sort out 3 very, very important things out there for himself. One of them, of course, would have been not having a clear-cut red to play for, hence why he had to, you know, force himself to be heading for the pack of reds. The second thing, of course, getting the pink to be available, with the black still out of play for now. And then, of course, the third thing is getting a couple more of those reds to be an open play for him. And now then, for now, we are seeing very similar situation to what we have seen from Ding Zhou yesterday, but in relation to this particular frame and this particular match as well, probably haven't seen that much of a, you know, fight back from Robertson's point of view just yet, because, you know, Ding was scoring some good points when he was getting those early opportunities. When I say good points, 40, 30 and 50, but Robertson still seems like he's going to struggle with himself. And yeah, as you can see, top breaks of just 1 point there from Robertson. And Zhao still looking to try and make it a third break here after making a break of 60 points, 12 and now 15 and counting. And once again, using that pocket very tightly in relation to the front jaw, trying to open up the angle there for himself to get that cue ball lined up nicely for those reds. Always risky to be doing that, but Always very satisfying when you make that job stick, and now he's going to have a clear-cut chance of just trying to stun the cue before the pink, play that shot into the left middle, and then just, hopefully he ends up with a bit of the angle on the pink so that he can just try and force that cue ball to be heading away from the red rather than just getting stuck too close to it. He's now gets himself 44 points ahead. Looking to try and extend that to more than 50 now, as he's looking to try and take the pink with probably the last of the easy reds disappearing after he was able to make such a good contact with a bunch of reds. Now he's allowed himself to be getting at least a 51 points lead. And still, going for a rest shot, which so far today haven't really been his best friends, those type of shots, and this time around it's going to be a lot more smooth here. He takes that red away nicely, makes it back down to 52 points of a lead, and only 83 at the table here, with the brown, 2 more reds, all being compromised, so it will already be a very difficult comeback for Robertson, and of course that's going to involve a mistake from Zhao right here, right now, which I have to say, based on what happened in the previous couple of frames, he's first of all unlikely to come at this stage, but ultimately, you feel like he will be coming down to Robertson, having that need to try and clear up the table from a single break there. And when his highest break so far in the match has been just a single point, then you are probably going to doubt whether that's going to be the case. But remember, he was actually the first player in the match to score a point, but ever since we have seen 118 points without answer there from Zhao, and a couple of those points have been by Neil Robertson. But this is a bad mistake there, and he's going to be 1 in 4 in relation to those rest shots, despite him making one of them previously along the side cushion. This one you could argue was a little bit easier, but he's missed that one by an absolute mile. And because of how much power there was on the red, it's going to go all the way towards the right corner. And now Robertson surely is not going to get any better opportunity to try and get himself back in the frame. I mean, he got the red in. I'm not sure he's going to have the colour, though, to go with it. And straight away having a very nervous look in relation to the scoreboard, because he knows he's not really in a position where he can afford to be ignoring those colours, because now he finds himself, 57 points behind and 67 at the table. So then, still not quite in that position. My pick for quarter victors are Zhao, Watchalong and Kyle Wilson. Well, you've gone for all the top seeds, which, apart from Williams, which is understandable, but I'll probably say, and I mean, Wilson is probably the way for you to go in relation to his match against Williams, because I'll probably say that Williams has so far been the weakest of anyone that has made it into the quarterfinals. Very unsteady in his match against Wakelin, even though he's managed to find some form, but you also have to put it down to Wakelin playing far from his best snooker out there. So I would expect Wilson, especially if he gets anywhere near that form that he's shown against Ronnie, to get over the finish line. But ultimately, you probably have to put it down to Murphy against Weezer probably being the most unpredictable match. And I would say Murphy's going to be the favourite, mostly for probably psychological reasons. He has lost out that match of his life, you could argue, apart from 2005 final with Stevens that he was able to actually get on top of. Lost a lot of finals ever since there. In 21, in 2015, I'm pretty sure he lost out to Bingham as well. And then, of course, in 2000 and I think it was 11 that he lost out to John Higgins. So, yeah, plenty of those negative experiences there that he had. But ultimately still trying to stay on the team positive there. So we'll have to wait and see. But for me, Murphy is going to be the favourite in that match. And look at that for a risky shot there from Zhao, looking to try and find a very thin corridor in between the red, the black and the pink. And in the end, despite touching the pink ever so slightly, still able to get that cue ball towards the top end of the table. Chinese crowd will try to irritate Murphy. Nah, I probably wouldn't say so. I think they certainly would be cheering for Weezer. I don't think you need to be a genius to say that in China, the newly crowned world champion of 2026. I mean, against a non-Chinese player, no matter who it was, unless probably was someone like Stephen Hendry or Ronnie O'Sullivan, then probably very likely to be very much the underdog and not to be the fan favourite. It's now Robertson pots a red, but even though he puts a hand of apology up, I'm pretty sure that's not really going to be a lot of an advantage to him, because as I said beforehand, he is losing those reds available to him, and he does find himself in a position of having potted 3 reds in the entire match. He's only scored 3 points here, so just having a very brief look to see. Well, he probably has to just roll that cube behind the green, even though, he needs to be looking at potentially trying to improve the position of the brown. But, I mean, he's thinking about it, so maybe just trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get the brown to be in the open position, and at the same time, just try and roll that cue ball in behind the green anyway. It's a risky shot that he went for, and I tell you what, it's very close in relation to if he got the result. So then 56 points clear of Zhao, and 59 at the table there. So then having a very good look at this one. I mean, the cue ball is close to the green, but the question is, can he just about get past it without touching it? And there is also going to be a point of a potential swerve being available, but Zhao looking at the scoreboard, which means he's probably going to go for something a little bit risky here, and he's thinking about trying to swerve this one around the green, but at the same time thinks against it after having another look, and well, it doesn't seem like he's got another option there, at least in his head. So then trying to swerve around the green, he managed to avoid the contact, but it's an interesting shot there, basically committing to always leave a chance away to Robertson. And it's now going to be the question of how easy the chance is actually going to be, and how clinical Robertson is going to be here, because despite only having, 2 points that he can afford to lose, he'll be certainly down to a great opportunity there for Zhao to try and get the best out of this one. But, well, surprised to see Robertson clearly doesn't really fancy his chances now. And a straightforward fizz battle, and he's going to try and send that cue ball past the brown. The line seems to be very good, just didn't want to have any sort of contact on the brown at all, and then he would have had Zhao to be snookered. And now he's got those 4 reds in a different sort of position there in relation to the grade of the difficulty for each and every single one of them, but it's certainly an improvement on what we've seen beforehand. And if you get a good chance and you're going to have the cue ball to be right in the mix of those reds, then all of a sudden you could be in there with a great opportunity. And now Zhao, whether that was impatience or what, he clearly didn't expect to get so close to trying to pot that red. And the red, which a couple of minutes ago was on the side cushion, is now going to be very much put on the plate there from Zhao over to Neil Robertson. Apart from O'Sullivan, Sean Higgins, and the rest of the 9 Chinese players are not well supported in China. Probably agree, because I think you talk about the huge names of Trump being the world number 1 for God knows how many seasons, but also I think, that's a bad shot from Robertson, and this could well cost him the frame. Some applause from the Chinese crowd, and once again, 4 reds that Robertson has managed to pot, but in the end, it seems like this one is going to be pretty much the worst of them all. Because to me, he's got an impossible cut on the black, which he may still have to try and attempt here, simply because of him not getting any choice. Having the pink potentially to be taken on as well here, but yeah, it's a very difficult shot to be taking on. He refuses the yellow because of it not really allowing him to do anything with it, but in the end, he gets a wonderful shot on the pink. And now he gets himself through to a chance of scoring 7 points on the break here. And ultimately, being 49 points behind, he's still got a chance here, And he's got a really good chance, you have to say, apart from having that red on the black ball cushion. He's got 2 more easier reds. The black is now going to be available, so he can afford to use the pink once if he wants to. So all of a sudden, that pink that he managed to put into the right corners, seemingly being a massive turnaround that he was looking for. And now then, a great opportunity to try and get a steal here of Zhao, and he's got absolutely no problem ahead of himself, apart from, as I say, that red on the black ball cushion, which probably wouldn't count as a huge issue there, or a huge obstacle, but at the same time, it's still something that you have to be very mindful about, and just make sure you get yourself over the finish line here without getting too much compromised by what's going to be happening around you. So then playing the black in towards the right corner and getting himself plenty of traction on the cue ball, making sure that he's still got a chance of trying to get around the black there, you would say, and position himself probably on the top spin side there, because even though I said he wants to have plenty of the angle, I'm not sure he's got enough of it to try and play this shot with plenty of backsmen to try and get around the other edge, unless he wants to try and test his luck a little bit once again, which probably wouldn't be recommended to him. So just trying to open up the pocket nicely and to give himself the best possible chance of being lined up on the black with the top side of it, ever so slightly, but still very important for him to have that chance of playing the black into the right corner and getting himself lined up for that red to be taken into the left part of the table. Another thing which will help Robertson here, he's going to be down to an opportunity on the red to be taken into the left part of the table, but also the yellow being slightly closer towards the left middle and being on the lower side of the table here as well. Although I do say that, I mean, he's going to have to take plenty of power away from the black there as he makes that last red into the pocket, and he's done really well to get himself through to that yellow, even though he's not going to be lined up with a perfect angle to try and get him lined up for the green itself. But ultimately, you still have to put it down to a decent effort there that he's managed to achieve, and just going to be looking at the yellow to be taken here and then leaving the cue ball to be lined up with a mid-range shot there on the green. You know, as he now finds himself 25 points behind with 27 still very much available to him. You know, takes that yellow with once again trying to close down the pocket as much as he can to play it as close to the front jaw as it was possible for him. And now then, there's a shot for the frame on the green, and he's missed it. Well, certainly going to be interesting to see on how sort of costly that's going to prove to be. But, well, that certainly was. I mean, I said he's done pretty well to recover from that position on the black, but you have to say that's when the damage was done. The fact that he was so awkwardly placed on the black in relation to the yellow to be a helping hand for him. Now, you know, it was a very straight yellow that he had, but unable to force any sort of angle to get that cue ball to be running towards the top end of the table. I would have backed him to go for this type of a shot, but once again, as we have seen beforehand, but Zhao now, you know, responds with a mistake of his own, but seems like he's going to be a little bit more fortunate here than Robertson. And yeah, he's going to get that green very much to a tight company with the black there. So both players not taking their chances, because Zhao would have had that green to be the frame ball for him. And with him still being at the table, it would have probably been very likely to be the winner of the frame, but in the end, not quite going to happen just yet. And, you know, Robertson leaves him up with a double opportunity here, which, I mean, you can take, I suppose, with him only needing to go for the green, but at the same time, you don't really want to be putting that cue ball into that large area of the spine of the black, the pink, and the blue. So he's going to try and reverse the roles here, and he's going to try and use that spine to his advantage instead, and he's played that shot superbly well, especially with Robertson to be in a position where he can't afford to give any foul points away. So he's going to have to put plenty of power in behind this one. Nearly cut the green into the corner, but how unlucky can you be? The cue ball is going to be heading perfectly into the pocket, and Robertson will be absolutely fuming as, well, he's got every right to be. He's played that shot quite well, and if the cue ball stays over the yellow pocket, he's probably likely to find Zhao to be snookered, but at the end stage, he'll be very much down to Neil Robertson to give another foul shot away, and yeah, he does find himself to be in a position of being 27 points behind, despite having only 25 at the table. So then, still a chance here for Zhao to try and take the green away in towards the right corner, and then just trying to go for this shot. It doesn't really do him a lot of damage. He's trying to go for a safety shot, but I'm not really sure what he was trying to achieve there. Maybe just caught a little bit of the wrong side of the green and trying to get that cue ball to be lined up in behind there. The spine of the pink, the blue, and the black to be slightly out of position. But of course doesn't really have to invent anything special now. Robertson is the one that has to start taking risks, and both in the match and the frame really, because in this frame, of course, now he finds himself to be snookered in relation to the points on the board here, being 27 points behind with only 25 available. But also, if he does go 2-0 behind, we could be looking at another chance there for this turn into a Ding Zhuyi against Zhao Xington match, as now Xington goes for clearly a well-made double into the green pocket for the green, but to be fair, he does apologise to Robertson, so clearly didn't mean that one to drop into the actual pocket, but still, it's now going to be 30 points of a lead, and Robertson is probably going to have to stay in his seat now. He's going to have to find 2 snookers on the brown to get him back in the frame, and even though the brown is going to still be at the table here, Robertson decides that he's going to be at the table for now as well. So 30 points behind, 22 at the table, and still looking to try and make it down on himself here. So they're looking at the shot on the brown here. I'm not sure if he wants to get the snooker on the brown now, or is he going to try and pot this one and get the 2 snookers on the blue? And he is going to try and go for that, which is surprising to be fair, because doesn't really need to be compromising himself that massively in relation to the now only having 3 colours to work with. But at the same time, he does need an extra foul point to get clear of Zhao Xington, and he didn't play that shot too well. Even though he was always going to get the snooker on the black, I'm pretty sure he would have liked the cue ball to be tighter towards the black, and therefore not allow Xington to be seeing anything of that black ball cushion, which in the end, to be fair, he still seems like he's managed to accomplish that mission. And Zhao Xington is just thinking of an alternative way for him to try and hit the blue here. So then this time around, of course, he still needs 2 snookers there, no matter what sort of foul he's going to get there, even if it's going to be on the black. Still going to need 1 more snooker for him to try and achieve. And look at that, how close that was from Zhao Xington. But in the end, close doesn't really mean anything in snooker, and that's not going to be 5 points to be given away to Neil Robertson of a foul shot. So then, got 1 of those snookers in. So in the end, that decision of trying to spot the brown seems to have been justified in full, because now he only needs 1 snooker, and he's going to be able to try and win the frame. But of course, easier said than done with only 3 balls at the table, 1 of them being the target ball. But he does have a bit of a buffer there with the pink and the black, which if he gets that cue ball anywhere near those 2, then could put Zhao Xington under some real pressure. For now, still finds himself 21 points behind with 18 at the table. And Xington is going to go for a shot that worked for him so well previously, and now it is going to be putting the blue over the pocket, which is still going to be a healthy thing there for Zhao Xington. But at the same time, I mean, I did mention it will be down to the pink and the black to be so close to each other. And the most interesting thing here is, I'm not actually too sure that potting the blue is going to be a bad thing for Robertson. As long as, I should say, he gets close to the pink, but he cannoned into the pink. I mean, he didn't get close to the pink, but he got a little bit too close, and in the end, not only has he cannoned into the pink, but also he's now brought the pink so far away from the black that he's basically just got rid of the blue for nothing. And he's now only going to have 2 of those colours to work with. So then 16 points behind, 13 at the table. And now we're going to have to wait and see on what's going to happen here with the pink to be taken here. So still very interesting from this point of view to see where the cue ball is going to be heading now. It's going to be heading towards the green pocket, but not too close to it in the end for Robertson to be worried about that one. So once again, back to Zhao Xington, having the pink very much in a position for that double. That has worked out twice for him today in this particular frame. Let's see if it's going to be 3rd time lucky. Not quite. Didn't judge the contact point too well. Had a double kiss. Put the pink to be pretty much over the left middle. But of course at this stage, it doesn't really have any value for Robertson to try and pop the pink here, because he would effectively mean that he's going to be the loser of the frame here, as long as the pink disappears before he gets the snooker, no matter if he's going to be the one to pot it or it's going to be Zhao Xington to be getting himself an extra 6 points clear here. So once again, is he going to be just trying to persevere with that double tactic, and he is for now. I mean, this time around, the pink is certainly not going to drop there, and it will still be very close towards the corner pocket. And now, this is where Robertson is going to have to be very much on the back foot here in relation to, probably going to have to sacrifice this shot in relation to just trying to keep the pink at the table. Whether he's going to be able to try and put this one somewhere safe remains to be seen. But, I mean, to be fair, that was a risky shot there in relation to potting the pink and how close he got to that. But I suppose when you're 16 points behind with 13 at the table, whatever shot you take on, it must be risky. Otherwise, you're not really there for a full purpose. And for now, Zhao still using that tactic of just sending the pink on a journey towards the pocket. And once again, this time around, he gets Robertson in a position where, even though he can try and overcut the pink on purpose, it's going to be difficult for him to try and get so much traction that he will put the black in between the cue ball and the pink, although he's played a brilliant safety there in relation to how close he managed to put the pink towards the black ball cushion and how far away it's now going to be from the cue ball. And once again, look at that for a double. I mean, that's a brilliant line that the Zhao has taken, and in fact, I'm pretty sure he is not too far away from actually being the player that has snookered Neil Robertson now. And of course, the part of the pink that Robertson can see is going to be inviting the potting angle, which is the last thing that Robertson wants now. So it's a very smart shot there from Zhao, even though it was pretty risky. But at the same time, he clearly felt like he had to take the risk, and Robertson responds with equally as good of a shot there, trying to take the pace away from the cue ball, but also playing that with so much side that he got a slight contact point on the pink and still allowed himself to be staying in the frame for now. But it felt like we all know what's going to happen now with Zhao just trying to send the cue ball towards the right corner, and now seems to have put the black into play perfectly well. And despite Robertson being the one needing some extra foul points, he's the one that is also going to find himself to be snookered. And just looking to try and go for a shot on the pink here. And let's see if he's going to be able to achieve that. And he has made a good contact with the pink, but at the end stage, you have to say, he still hasn't really done enough to try and put the pink safe. And now, Zhao has got another opportunity to try and kill the frame away, fully and entirely away from Neil Robertson. So then, just the pink for it to be a 2-0 lead, but in the end, it is going to be squeezed into that yellow pocket, and it is 6 points there, which would be enough there for Zhao to take it. 71 points to 49 there, and ultimately get himself on that line in relation to having a carbon copy of the match so far as to what he had against Ding Zhuhui as well. It's only 2 frames, but it's still going to be very important for him, as it's now going to be down to Zhao to be leading Neil Robertson by 2 frames to 0, despite neither one of the players playing their best game, which once again has very much been the case in the first round match against Ding. But you also have to say, by the way, shout out to Karen Wilson. I mean, he was having a bit of a slow start to the first frame, but as I said, I just don't really feel like Williams is doing himself a little bit of justice there in relation to his form. And you know, Wilson was going to be the favourite anyway coming into this match, but now he's got himself a 2-0 lead with Williams only scoring 33 points across the opening 2 frames, and all of them have come in the first frame with a very low scoring type of a frame out there. But in the end, on the second frame, Wilson was able to step up his game to a whole new level, and with a break of 76 points, he was able to kill the intrigue before it really started to occur out there. So it's still quite interesting to be watching this one, and just realizing that at this stage yesterday, you know, we have seen some of the favourites struggling in relation to the likes of, you know, John Higgins not having the easiest of runs against Jack Lisowski, but ultimately you probably have to put it down to the Joey Long, a lot more of a challenge for Sean Murphy than many, me included, probably would have thought there. But I felt like with Joey Long, you probably had to take the hint in relation to what he's done with Mark Selby. And, you know, after a performance like that, you probably had to expect something like that to be very much the reality against Murphy. But it would prove not quite to be enough out there for him to try and take it towards the quarterfinals. and have one of his biggest paychecks of the entire career out there, which I'm pretty sure is still going to be sat at £45,000 with the English Open runner-up spot there to Mark Cullen. It was never going to get any closer than that, especially after a mighty comeback, being something like 7-2 down. In the end, managed to force a decider, and actually I'm pretty sure he was leading by 8 frames to 7, but it was not quite to be enough there for him. Now then, Neil Robertson and Zhao Xingtong are about to get us underway for the third frame. It is Zhao Xingtong with a break-off, and yeah, incredibly actually, that the best shot that Robertson has played in the entire match was very much the first shot of the match for him. And of course, he was under very similar circumstances. Once again, only one red available here for Robertson, but the one that he can try and go for into the corner. And once again, I mean, just as I was saying, what he's done in the first frame, I mean, that's an absolute deja vu there for Robertson. And he was so good to him that he had to do it twice. But of course, he wouldn't like to be completely repeating this one, because of course, he's gone on to miss the black since that point. And this time around, he's going to get the black in, but I'm not sure he's going to get the reward for that though. Because it's all going to come down to if he can see any one of those reds to be taken into the left corner. The answer does seem to be pretty negative at this stage, and therefore he's going to have to try and go for a red to be taken in towards the green pocket here. Whether he's going to be able to achieve that or not is going to be an interesting factor as well. But yeah, he wasn't even thinking about that one too much, although he got very close to trying to fluke that red in towards the left middle. In the end, it was just a safety shot that he was attempting. So then, another break of 8 points here for Neil Robertson. Still struggling to get through to double digits. Only once he was able to do that with his break of 33 points. And to be fair, you can't really say that Zhao Xingtong was able to do that plenty more times, but certainly going a little bit better there in comparison to Neil Robertson, as he now plays an aggressive but controlled safety shot here. Just about missing out on the contact with the brown, and ultimately it's an interesting one here for Robertson, because even though he would seem like he's got a couple of those open reds to be available, just about misses the contact point on the pink, and does actually get through to those reds. So that they will come down to Xingtong just having to roll the cue ball towards the reds, and Robertson should have an opportunity to just nudge the cue ball towards the reds again. And it should be a foul here, as Robertson has said to the referee. So he clearly thinks that he has touched the pink there, and he has. So then 6 points to be given away for Zhao Xingtong. Doesn't really matter at this stage, but ultimately, of course, it's still now going to be reducing that gap from 8 points down to just 2 points of the advantage for Neil Robertson. And ultimately, of course, he has now allowed Zhao Xingtong to get out of that situation and be the one applying the pressure here on Neil Robertson. Look at how well he's managed to do that. Brilliant shot there of 3 cushions there. Looking to try and send the cue ball to be lined up for the ball cushion here. And now a very tight line that Robertson has to be taking on. And in the end, he's going to miss out on the shot for the red. So another foul shot that Robertson is going to commit here. And at this stage, he does get Zhao Xingtong into the lead here, and he is going to ask the referee to put the cue ball back exactly where he was here, because he clearly thinks even though the cue ball is going to be underneath the blue ball line, you still feel like he will be very much down to, you know, Xingtong expecting to get a bit of a better chance from this one. And to be fair, for that to be the case, he probably does need Robertson to make contact with the red, but to do it in a very thick way so that he is going to have a chance to get that cue ball to be clashing with the red on the left side of the table. But in the end, that wasn't something that Robertson was trying to achieve there, and he's played a really good shot on the second time of asking, and now he will be back down to Zhao Xingtong to have the opportunity, whether he wants to try and go for that red along the side cushion. As I say, he does give himself an opportunity with that 2 frame lead. He nearly potted that red somehow into the right corner. He's gone all the way across the black ball cushion, and now he's still going to leave the table there. So how many foul shots have we already seen here in this frame? But even at this stage, of course, he will be all down to No opportunities given away to Neil Robertson, and still getting that cue ball to be positioned in behind the brown here. So a very careful shot that he must play here into the pack of reds, whether it's going to be from the left or the right side. Doesn't really matter, but because it's now still going to put Zhao to be the one chasing down Neil Robertson. And a brilliant shot there by Robertson with, how little of those reds Kensington actually see out there. Whether he's going to be able to get the contact or not remains to be seen, but they're able to achieve that pretty well. And now then, giving the turn back to Neil Robertson after playing that shot well. But look at that once again. I mean, the red has genuinely gone all the way, nearly dropped itself into the right corner pocket despite Zhao attempting to pot it into the left part of the table, but in the end it didn't quite work out, as Robertson now takes an attempted shot to get that cue ball past the yellow. He hasn't managed to do that, and therefore he has allowed Zhao to be looking at this red to try and take it on there into the right corner, being the king of the long shots usually. Probably not something that you would say based on what we've seen in the opening 10 frames or so that he's played. But this is a lot more like it, and just as I say, we haven't really seen those type of shots to be going in there. That mistake from Robertson that he was clearly very disappointed with himself now seems to have cost him very, very dearly. And now it will be all down to the blue to be taken into the left middle, play the shot with plenty of power there on the cue ball, and try and get himself through to a chance of that cue ball being lined up for the red, taken into the right corner. But surprisingly with Zhao, it seems like he's actually under on for that one, which of course at this stage can only be aimed at misjudging the power and just not playing that shot well enough. So then gonna have to wait and see if that was the case, or is he just gonna have to try and take the red close to the black there. He did have to go for that more difficult option, but in the end it's not really gonna help his chances now, because the red is gonna stay out of the pocket, and just 6 points to be scored there from Zhao. Once again, just doesn't seem like he's going to be firing on all cylinders here. Talking about cylinders, let's see what the Australian machine of power can try and achieve here. And in the end, he's going to achieve an awful lot of troubles for himself. And I tell you what, he could probably... I was going to say he probably could not have had a worse outcome of a shot there, but I think he can get through to the pink, which is super important here. As you might have guessed, he tried to... disrupt the reds away from each other on the main pack, but as sometimes does happen, he has ended up with the cue ball to be exactly in the mix there. No chance to hit the black, a slim chance to hit the pink, which may actually be all that he needs, especially with one of the reds that he's developed being very much over the left middle here in relation to being very close. And he probably does need cover in relation to that cue ball placement. Whether he's going to be able to get it or not remains to be seen. So then just a very thin contact on the pink, and just trying to use the brown and the green to his advantage. The line seems to be very good, but I'd have to say it's also going to be very tight for him in relation to can that cue ball get past the brown and still pot that red into the left middle without trying to swerve too much around it, because you do have to say Zhao doesn't really have an awful lot of options to his name. Let's have a little look. Yes, the brown is going to be covering that red perfectly well. So Robertson can get himself a little pat on the back there. He's played that shot about as well as he could have, but also look at how well he's managed to cover up the entirety of the lower end of the table as well. And now he'll be very much coming down to a chance here for Zhao to try and get those reds to be working in the right direction for him. But at this stage, you probably have to put it down to just trying to find himself in a position where Robertson won't be scoring an awful lot of points there on the next time that he comes back to the table. Which, once again, easier said than done. Can only see 2 reds on the right-hand side of the table. The one on the left side of them too probably is going to be useless in relation to trying to get that cue ball to be aimed to the top end of the table. So then he's gone for the safe option, just trying to roll the cue ball towards the reds. And, well, I say the save option here. Not sure how safe it's actually going to turn out to be. But, yeah, I mean, it does sort of force Robertson to be taking on this red, I have to say, because the angle is not the best on it anyway to try and get it positioned for the black here. So, I mean, even though it does seem like Zhao Ziton didn't play that shot superbly well, he has actually given himself a chance to be the man with the initiative here, because Robertson, he's not going to have the nerves, he's not going to have the frame advantage to try and go for that raid, because he would throw the position wide open should he miss it, and not necessarily be in a great position for the colour, even if he would have made that red in. Zhao versus Trump in the final, or Buzit versus Trump in the final. Well, it could still be the case, but I think you are certainly ignoring the likes of Sean Murphy and, John Higgins. You remember, Trump has a horrible head-to-head recently against John Higgins. When I say horrible, I think it's 3 matches that he's lost in the last 4. The one that he's won was in the Northern Ireland Open, I think, 5 frames to 2, on his way to be that's going to be a re-rack. So, I'll tell you what, it's going to be very interesting to see this one, because now we are going to have the frame to be reset, even though there was 29 points to be scored, but both of the players deciding that red over the left middle was going to be a problem for both of them. So then, just agreement on a re-rack, and back down to the start of the third frame. Once again, Zhao Ziton to be the player to get us underway here. But yeah, I think with Higgins, he has had 2 very good wins against Trump, both of them to come in the semi-finals actually, so it's a little bit unusual for them to be seeing each other at the quarter-final stage, but I suppose that's going to be down to the invitational tournament that Shanghai Masters, of course, is, so you're not really going to have lower seeds to be anticipating out there. Therefore, someone like John Higgins may have to play the world number 1 a little bit sooner than usual. And yeah, I think Higgins is certainly going to be a threat there to Trump. Whether he's going to be able to beat him or not is going to be another matter. Because, once again, as I say, both of those semi-finals that he's managed to beat him with didn't really help him a lot to try and get anywhere near winning the title. He has managed to get himself through to a couple of those finals in the last season, but didn't win any of them. And probably, in fact, you have to say, wasn't really too close to winning either of them. But in the end, when it comes down to defeating Trump, it was always plenty of drama. It was always plenty of chances there for Trump. And, he was very animated at the Players' Championship when he was losing out on that raid into the corner. And slamming the table with his fist as well. Show how much it meant to him. But that was, of course, the last shot that he's played in the Players' Championship. And, he was very much down to Zhao Ziton against John Higgins' story to be written, and Robertson there goes for a very interesting short selection, a little bit reckless, but in the end allows himself to be avoiding a double kiss, though there was a little bit of a brush off that raid, which could have easily made the contact inevitable with the cue ball. Right now, it's still going to be down to a chance here for Zhao Ziton to be taking this right away. And look at that brilliant strike there from Zhao Ziton. And he gets himself in a position that he hasn't really found himself with in that third frame of a great chance that he has been able to create out of nowhere because of how difficult that long raid was. Now then, oh, look at that. Like a slow reaction from the cue ball. It seemed like he didn't have any cue action at all. And then just kicked in massively there. The sort of Trump shot that you would expect to see with that sort of power. But in the end, he got him the result that he wanted. And he got him very close towards the raid that he was aiming for as well by the left middle. Trump Wu final. They're in the same half. Could be semis if both win quarters. That is a great point, of course. Trump and John Higgins are going to be playing exactly the same points as Weezer and Sean Murphy, which of course makes it down to the lower side of the draw. So we're going to have a semi-final of Zhao Ziton winner, or the winner of the match in between Zhao Ziton and Neil Robertson to play the winner of the match in between Karen Wilson and Mark Williams. And then Zhao Ziton, Neil Robertson, Karen Wilson or Mark Williams are going to be waiting for a finalist to be made of another quarter of players still left out there. But for now, Zhao Ziton is going to have to try and put his hopes of winning the frame on hold here. After playing that brown into the green pocket, he was unable to get a clean strike into the reds, and therefore the cue ball was going to get a little bit stuck, which sort of forced him to be taking a safety shot out there. and now forces Robertson to be 13 points behind, whilst still having 131 points at the table ahead of himself. As Robertson there plays a decent safety shot, and probably is not really going to allow Zhao to be doing anything of significant matter there for him, in relation to just having to play a very defensive shot here. Now, having a look to see on what's going to be happening with those reds. Probably going to be down to just a very thin shot into the reds, and just trying to get that cue ball towards and past the brown here, which he has done. But ultimately doesn't want it to be too far away from the ball cushion, which could still lead to Zhao not getting the best sort of opportunity there to try and get that red into the corner. If he can, of course, see that one, and is going to be able to get past the brown, which the answer for seems to be negative for now. So then just having to try and work towards the overall target of trying to get those reds to be spread out away from each other. Play that shot well in relation to who's managed to accomplish that mission, but also at the same time hasn't really left anything available for Neil Robertson to try and score out there. So then just having a look to see with what is going to happen here with those reds. With Neil Robertson, I feel like he has got the gap through the left-hand side of the table, but I mean, he's gone for that cross double. Still going to be very important to try and bring that cue ball all the way to the top edge of the table here, and he's done that. Now they're just looking for the way past the yellow now for Zhao, as he's looking to try and get himself lined up for the red to be taken towards the right corner. That means Zhao versus try and final. Well, if you talk about the top seeded players, then of course he would have to be Robertson, but for now, with Zhao taking a 2-0 lead against Neil, probably have to say that he certainly does put himself in that window of being a firm favourite here, even though, of course, the odds would have been in his favour even before the match has got underway. There's now another great safety shot there from Zhao, just getting that cue ball to be kept within the ball cushion or somewhere near it. Now then, still forcing Robertson to go for that red, taken into the right part of the table. Whether he's going to try and attempt that one to be taken into the right corner or not, he has, and he's gone horribly wrong for him. Well, because he overcut that red by so much of a margin, he sort of cannoned that cue ball into another red and slowed it down completely and left it in a very dangerous zone there in relation to those sort of reds, and Zhao wins 6-4. Well, that's what I said before the match started, but I feel like for now, I wouldn't really say that I'm going to stick with that prediction. I feel like for now we are looking at a very similar situation to what we've seen in the match in between Ding Junhui and Zhao, and I mean, you could say something very similar that we've seen in the match of Sao Goodall and Neil Robertson, and we all know how that one ended, with Robertson being able to find a very late comeback at that stage. But ultimately, Zhao is not going to be Sao Goodall when it comes to the pedigree of the achievements, but also the way that he's playing, even in this particular frame. You know, he's now getting himself through to a very good chance of score even more points on the board to add to the 13 points of a gap that he had, with so many of those reds to be available to him. And after that re-rack, taking a little bit of a sting out of his momentum, now seemingly looking to try and get back exactly where he left off in the previous couple of frames, and still get himself in that window of trying to go for the black now into the right corner. You know, he will inevitably have to go and send the cue ball into the reds, maybe once, maybe twice then, depending on how effective the first effort is actually going to be there. But, you know, I'm not sure if he wants to try and achieve that right now, or does he want to try and make sure, you know, he's going to be able to get a couple more points on the board here. You can see more than treble the number of balls spotted there for Zhao, and at the same time just looking to try and, well, I mean, he was trying to get probably on the left side of the green there. He didn't really manage to accomplish that mission too well, but at the same time, he's now allowed himself to be lined up for the red to be taken into the left corner here. So then, trying to go for a very much a careful swerve around the green, and he's played that shot well in relation to missing out on that front jaw of the middle pocket, not using too much of the back end jaw either. And in the end, even though he was a red, which would have still been classified as the one that was in the open play, you still probably have to say it was down to a very good shot that he's played, and now getting himself lined up for the blue. getting the top side of it has also allowed him to be lined up for the blue to be taken with the next red here, as he now gets himself through to 44 points of a gap, something that he's done beforehand here, of course. And another break of 30 plus there, which so far today has been a bit of a luxury there for the both players. Now trying to send that cue ball towards those reds. I'll tell you what, he needs that cue ball to slow down now, and then he'll be perfectly lined up for the reds. I'm telling you what, I'm not sure if the cue ball has pulled up in time there. I think he has, and if he has, then it's going to be all down to the next couple of shots, which will dictate whether Zhao Xington is still going to be very much approaching that century break. And look at that for a shot. I mean, clearly, very much aware that the black was not going to be available to be heading in towards the left corner of the table. You know, having to go for the pink to be taken into the same pocket there as the red that he's managed to play previously. And now, of course, he is going to be getting through to a finish line. And 6-4 seems to be a lot more of a scoreline, just getting further and further away there. And not really in favour of Neil Robertson for now. 56 points is the lead here, 43 points is the break. Zhao Xington is now going to have to try and use the blue here. Doesn't really want to risk getting that position all wrong on the ping there, especially since he hasn't won the frame just yet. And still a lot of snooker left. Zhao almost halfway there though. Yeah, as I say, I think it's going to be very much down to Chris Wakelin against Mark Williams all over this place again. Or it could turn out to be Ding Zhuhui against Zhao Xington there. It just depends on what sort of Robertson we're going to see in the full frame onwards, because if it's going to be all the same there from Zhao Xington just dominating the play, whether it's going to be through his brilliance of the game or Robertson just struggling to put a sequence of balls together, it doesn't really matter for Zhao Xington. He's just here to take off whatever's ahead of himself, and now he's about to take the frame ball away. 67 points ahead. He'll be 68 points clear with the blue disappearing into the right middle. That's what he's done. And now with 5 reds still available here, we do have a chance here for Zhao Xington to make a century break. You know, he's still going for a potential 122 here if he does take every single one of those reds with a black, which would be extraordinary. But more importantly, he's going to try and improve on the break of, I think it was 60 points that it has been his highest. So it's going to be only 1 point away from that if he's going to be able to get the blue in here. So then just looking to try and go for the blue now to be taken very carefully with topspin on the cue ball, having to play that shot underneath the black there. The cue ball is going to stop just about in time so that he's going to have a run of taking that red away in towards the left corner, and still looking to try and potentially get himself lined up for the black to be taken now. So they're having a bit of a look towards the pink and the red here, probably likely to go for that combination to be disturbed right now, and still to be aiming for the black to disappear into the right corner. So then 69 points of a break, and Neil Robertson will be very disappointed with how this frame, and therefore the match has gone for him really, because it could have easily been 2-1 in his favour. You probably have to say it would have been a little bit opportunistic for you to say that Robertson could have won all of these frames, although individually, certainly have to say that he could have done that. Now then Zhao is about to find himself with a very difficult shot on the ping to play, and probably committed to be taking a double on here, after taking the pink away in towards the green pocket as well. So then by far the highest break of the match. Certainly something that Neil Robertson hasn't really seen for him to be scoring in relation to 76 points. But look at that for a double, and look at that for a shot. Absolute brilliance there from Zhao Xington. Not only did he manage to get a very difficult pink into the green pocket, he also has managed to get the double in with another red, and also get the last of those reds to be in the open play, and a very deserved century break now to be on the horizon. And well, tell you what, I did say he was going for a 122. He's not going to be far away from that now, with the blue getting him through towards the 90 points of a break. And then still a total clearance of 117 is going to be on there, and that's considering all the difficulties that he would have had ahead of himself of this position. Very impressive stuff there from Zhao Xington, and now 6 colours all to be on their spots there after a wonderful break, and probably about to reach its cliffhanger there for Zhao Xington, and yet another century break there is now going to be within reach fact, it's now going to be only 2 shots as the green disappears. The brown will make it 99 points of a break, and then the blue will make it 104 points and counting there for him. So then once again, plenty of backspin to be added on the brown. Straight into the heart of the pocket it will go, and then just carefully brushes the blue towards the left middle for it to be another break of 100 plus points there. Zhao Xingtong has certainly been able to find some really good form there in the recent couple of frames. And with all that absence of form from Neil Robertson, it's now going to be very much his show to be seeing out there. It is a break of 110 here, about to make it a break of 117, absolutely dominates the frame here in relation to Neil Robertson, and you can see 75 balls spotted there for Zhao Xingtong, only 15 of those for Neil Robertson, so exactly 5 times less there in relation to that particular stat of the game. We don't have to rely on Kyron to fly the English flag, exclude me. Well, I mean, we'll see whether it's going to be down to him, because Trump could still try and get himself past Higgins. You know, look at that, by the way, for the red. That was where it all started. Brilliant shot there from Zhao Xingtong with that long-range shot. And Neil Robertson certainly would have thought he's got a brilliant chance of coming back to the table. In the end, that wasn't quite the reality that he would have been hoping for. And now he will be down to Zhao Xingtong to try and make it a perfect sweep there of 4 frames in the first mini session. Or is it going to be all down to a chance from Neil Robertson's point of view to try and get himself at least a frame on the board to keep him in, well, a decent opportunity there to try and do something about it. But in the end, once again, Karen Wilson and Mark Williams have shown some great pace to their particular match. It's now, you're going to see all 4 frames to be over. And Karen Wilson still leads Mark Williams by 3 frames to 1 after them both having some really high breaks there. Wilson with a break of 76 points in the second frame. Williams responds with a break of 82 in the third one, and then even higher from Wilson in the frame number 4 of 84 points. So, still very much all to play for in that particular part of the Shanghai. Of course, just being right around the corner in relation to the arena, and still looking very closely there in relation to Zhao Xingtong and Neil Robertson. So then the players do seem to go for a little bit of a break. So we can join you in a couple of moments' time to see what's going to happen here in the 4th frame before we get to the intermission. Now then, everyone, a quick sip of water, a quick thoughts gathering there from Neil Robertson. But to be fair to him, you have to say there probably were plenty of opportunities in the previous frame for him to try and achieve that. Right now, it will be all down to trying to win the fourth frame. Whether he does it or not is going to be another matter. But if he doesn't, then he is going to find himself with an absolute mountain to climb, being 4-0 down, and also having to try and come back with probably the man that has the most bit of form out there of anyone on the snooker table as it stands, especially with how confidently he was able to defeat Ding Junhui there, as the break-off shot by Robertson has been done now. And after a safety of Zhao Zington as well, Robertson is the one that finds himself under a little bit of pressure here, trying to go for the reds. And, well, he didn't really want to have a contact with the brown out there. So now, as he leaves the turn over to Zhao Zington, there is going to be a chance of Zington going for that red in towards the right corner. Whether he's going to be able to pull that shot off or not. Once again, he's going to have to see that cue ball to travel a long way for it to sort of go upstairs towards the baulk line. And once again, that long range, even though he served him brilliantly in the previous frame, for one and only shot that he attempted, hasn't seemingly served him so well throughout the rest of the match so far. Now then, a chance for Robertson to try and go for the red, just to try and send it towards the right middle. And in the end, he decides to go for an alternative shot there, but he needed to make sure that red is going to now be covered up by the blue, which I'm not sure he has done. And also the body language of Robertson there, I'm not sure whether that was a very straightforward shot that he thought, but I think he's had a bit of a mistake there. And in the circumstances that he had to himself with such a simple safety shot to play, I mean, if Zhao does go for this one, which he has, but he hasn't made that one stick, so, Robertson was let off the hook there a little bit. Now then, still, our position is going to be quite a challenge there to either one of the players, but especially to Robertson. The thing about not playing well, it's always going to be down to plenty of pressure on yourself and your shoulders when, you're not playing well and you come to the table and you've got such a difficult position ahead of yourself. Could still be very much the case here with Neil, but for now, he gets a very clean red first in. Now then, a point clear, which is already a start there that we haven't seen during every single one of those frames there for Neil Robertson. Now just trying to make sure he gets the black in as well. He's always going to be dragging that cue ball across the table and just trying to beelines up, still a little bit lower than the red that he's about to take in towards the left corner of the table. But now then, just trying to get that cue ball to be played probably towards the blue there. I don't think there is a realistic reason why he would try to go for the black now to be taken into the right corner, but ultimately, it's still going to work out pretty well there for Neil, as he's now looking at that blue to be taking on, and he's just about top side of it, which inevitably, especially if he uses the right side cushion, could still bring him right into play there in relation to those reds next to the black there. Well, I think I overestimated the angle that he had, and now it's going to be a shot along the cushion, which, I mean, usually it's quite an easy one, but with how tight the cue ball is towards the right side cushion here, I'm not sure Neil can leave without an extension, and he can't, so he's going to have to use the extension to try and go for the shot in towards the right corner. So then, a very key shot coming up there for Neil, having to make sure he goes for the red to be carefully cut into the corner. And well, I mean, that has been the exact story of the day for him, and I'm pretty sure if you are good at lip reading, I'm not going to say exactly the things that he said, but it's not going to be thank you very much there, I'll tell you that for free. Now he finds himself 14 points clear, but leaves the red over the corner pocket for Zhao Zington. And well, certainly if you look at the history books and you look at the way the Zhao Zington has been able to take those chances away, especially in the previous frame, he could well be saying hello to the intermission there for Robertson's point of view. Whether that's going to be the case or not, we're going to have to find out with the next 20 shots or so. But Zhao Zington now already getting a first red and black combination in. But that's what I was saying there. I mean, I thought he had a lot more angle on the blue. He clearly didn't, because, there was a lot of power that he put in that shot. But I did also have that feeling where I did actually think that it was going to be down to the next couple of shots that he would compromise him at. I still thought that he was going to get that red comfortably, but, I suppose you never quite know just what experience does the player have when they're having to go for an extension on a cushion shot. It's never a nice sign there for them because they're clearly going to be stretching out a little bit. You're never going to go for a rest shot on this one because that's going to be, unless you're the likes of Murphy or Wilson, it's going to be just a suicide mission for you. And yeah, he had to stretch out. He didn't manage to execute it quite as well. And now 17 points later for Zhao Xingtong, he now finds himself to be the player in the lead. And certainly looking to try and send the cue ball into the reds. Although, I mean, I thought he was going to do it now. He clearly thinks there is going to be one more red for him to take in towards the right part of the table for now. Get himself 10 points clear. And then at that stage, he's going to have a chance of just playing that cue ball in towards the black. And then inevitably get himself slightly top side of a black. And you know what he's going to do now. But he's going to have to try and catch the pack of reds from underneath, which is not going to be an easier thing to do. But look at how well he's played that shot. I mean, exactly, in my head, exactly as I pictured it. And the result is not brilliant, but it's certainly going to be a great one for him to try and develop on. Because even though he's not going to be lined up perfectly on the red, he's still got one into the left middle, which you would expect him to take, which he has done. Now, 33 points. Plays 14, and yeah, once again, that simple shot that he had, apart from not having a simple red after that, which you already managed to fix with potting the red into the right middle, there's nothing that is going to stop him right now, apart from an obvious error of a pot success, or very clearly running out of position here. So that frustration from Robertson, you know, is going to be very much justified there, because 3-1, there's always going to be hope there. 4-0, there's always going to be a sign of a goodbye on the approach. And yeah, of course, you know, the fact that Zhao Xingtong is still absolutely untouchable in the first, you know, mini session of the season so far, excluding the Championship League, which I'm pretty sure he still had a 3-0 win over Gao Yang, I think, at that stage. So yeah, very much impressive stuff there from Zhao Xingtong. If he does finally get himself over the finish line here, and now he's had 6 reds, 6 blacks, and that leaves him with 48 points to play 14. So 34 points ahead, 83 at the table as he makes that 75 right now. Taking one of those reds in towards the right part of the table. Still going to have plenty of the angle on the cue ball to try and get around the black, although he has underrun for this one. I mean, it's not like he's going for a 147. Robertson has managed to score those 14 points previously, so there's not really going to be a lot of harm in trying to play for the pink or blue, but there's going to be a lot more effort on it. But look at that. I mean, just makes it look so effortless there, taking so much power away from the cue ball and just dragging it across past the red and onto the pink. And, you know, 3 seconds later, takes the pink itself. Puts himself 49 points ahead and 67 points at the table here as well. So then looking for the red to be taken into the right corner. Plenty of topspin on that shot and just trying to get the cue ball to bounce away from the black ball cushion. The next red will be a frame ball, and it will be very much a clean sweep there for Zhao Xingtong. The third break of 50 plus. He has made a century beforehand in the previous frame, and he's certainly trying to make another century break here, even though, of course, at that stage, he didn't quite win the frame there, but he was still looking to try and develop the reds on the left-hand side of the table. And now as he got 3 of those available, as long as he takes, well, to be fair, he can't really take reasonable colours with it and make a century break. So he's going to need all 4 reds. Make that 3 as he pots the first one and makes it a combination with the blue. Gets himself through to 77 points on the break. So, yeah, those 3 reds with 3 blacks there will certainly get him a century break that he's going to be looking for. The yellow is going to be compromised by the brown. The brown out of position and the pink to be on the brown spot as well. Does cause a little bit of confusion, but as I say, I think Zhao Xingtong is going to be looking to try and get himself past this stage. But the red is going to stay away from the pocket, so in the end, it will be a break of 85 points, but it will be more than enough there for Zhao Xingtong to get himself into a 4-0 lead and a break of 14 points from Robertson. Well, it started very interesting indeed, because it seemed like he's managed to get himself through that, you know, bumpy phase at the starting point of a frame, but in the end, still a very costly mistake. has cost him, pardon the pun, Zhao 6-2. Well, it does seem like a very likely scoreline, which does remind you of the match that he's played against Ding Zhuyi, but for now, Robertson is going to have to try and find himself on the ball first because, it has been a very one-sided match there. And probably a lot more one-sided than Ding Zhuyi out there because, Ding had 2 frames where he was 1 shot away from winning the frame, and I'm pretty sure, 354 points to 64 for Robertson does tell you a little bit about what's happened. And hoping that Robertson will be able to come back with a little bit more success out there in the second mini session. But for now, it is the intermission and a 15 minutes break for the players to see. And when we come back, is it going to be still very much down to Zhao Xingtong's show to be seen, or is it going to be Robertson to try and make it a little bit more of a comeback and make a game out of this match? Stay tuned in.
Traveling mountains just to find the loudest seas. We sat down by the fire, knowing we could aim higher, but we didn't know that yet. So if you want something to hold on to, gotta find it first. But here I am, 'cause I've been laying under palm trees waiting for the summer, knowing there's nowhere to go. you want something to hold on to, gotta find it first. But here I am, 'cause I've been laying under palm trees, waiting for the summer, knowing there's nowhere to go. 'Cause I am happy on this island, wanna be my farmland. I don't ever want to leave, I'm in a tropic club.
My heart rages around like an ocean in my head, because there are so many things that I left unsaid. I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that is not reality.
Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 won't you let the light shine through? Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you,
Now, everybody, we are back after the intermission, and it's now going to be all down to the ultimate comeback to be seen from Neil Robertson if he is potentially looking to try and play in another semi-final for the Shanghai Masters. Whether that's going to be this season or not, it's very unlikely to be said. If you look at what happened with the previous times where Zhao did have a 4-0 lead over his opponents in first to 6, first to 9, or any sort of a match as well. He just doesn't seem like the player that can lose the touch to winning those frames, and you would back him, of course, to win 2 out of the remaining 7 frames at least. And that, of course, includes, Robertson potentially trying to take it into a decider. For now, we are going to have a break-off shot then from Zhao, and it will be very interesting to see the way Robertson is going to respond to it. And the way that he has responded to it is pretty much exactly the same way as he's trying to do it in the first and the third frames. But, on that particular occasion, he was able to get the red into the corner of the left-hand side of the table. This time around, not so much, and Zhao straight away. Well, that was a really good effort there of trying to cut the red into the middle. Very dangerous shots these are for your opponent, because he wasn't risking anything, as Robertson will find out soon, because he doesn't have anything ahead of him now. But, of course, Zington would have been perfectly lined up for the black had the red been a couple of millimeters closer towards the front jaw rather than the back end of it. And then all of a sudden, Zington would have found himself in a brilliant position for the black to be taken. Meanwhile, Robertson, clearly, the thing about Robertson is that it is exactly why it was so problematic for Ding to try and recover yesterday. But, the bigger issue for Robertson is that we've seen it with Ding yesterday. He had the ability to be taking frames away from Zhao, and he was just lacking that final piece of the jigsaw to try and put it in place and get himself lined up for a frame win whilst literally putting a frame ball. Robertson didn't really get anywhere near a frame ball yet, and just trying to speed up the process there, you might say. And this is a good effort there from Zhao, but once again, last time around he was playing the shot into the right middle. He caught the back end jaw. This time around just brushes off a little bit of the front jaw there. But, Robertson there hanging on the edge, because if that one goes in, not to make any predictions here, of course, but you would have absolutely backed Zington to make the most out of this one as well. Couldn't quite make it back-to-back centuries in the previous frame, but certainly was able to make it back-to-back 80-plus breaks. And, I'll tell you what, that's a risky shot there Robertson was taking on. But I suppose anything that he does right now is going to be either considered risky or brilliant, because Zhao Zington's just been getting all-out attack there in relation to himself as well. And it's not a real surprise that he's looking for the red. Well, maybe a third time lucky there. He's gone for 2 shots into the right middle. Once he got the back end jaw, once he got the front jaw. So mathematically, probably have to say, it'll be not at all surprised if he does make this one to be going absolutely on target. But I'm not even sure which one of those reds is he going for, to be fair, because the reason why I said it was risky from Robertson is that, for me, he's nearly shown that red to be right next to the pocket, which is still going to be a bit of an awkward angle. But, well, in the end, it was a safety shot attempt from Zhao. It was a pretty good one. You have to say it was very risky in relation to the line that the red was taking. But now it'll be interesting to see what Robertson is talking about here, because he's clearly got something in his mind to the referee. So let's have a little look. So I think it's just someone not being able to get to their seats in time, which is a little bit weird because we've now had 3 or 4 minutes of action of the 5th frame. But at the same time, it's not like there's going to be an absolute stampede in there. It's just going to be a couple of people getting stuck in the canteen, and now it's going to be all back onto normal. Robertson has taken his safety shot away, and he was always going to have a free one, to be fair. You have to say, with in relation to what Zhao has done previously, he was always going to leave him a red over the right side cushion to try and make usage of. And now, a shot later, it's going to be interesting to see whether Robertson has actually gone, well, the aggressive mode here, because he has potentially got a red available into the left middle. Whether he makes this one or not remains to be seen, and I think he's gone too far back, and he has. Doesn't want the cue ball to go in off, though, and to be fair, because he hasn't gone in off, he's now played a really good safety shot, you could say, because even though the red has bounced away, it's bounced away from the back end jaw, which always leaves the red to be heading towards the lower end of the table, which there's not going to be any sign of a cue ball being there, which probably is going to be great news to the ears of Neil Robertson, if there's going to be any of them today, in the previous 4 frames in a bit. But still, There's always a chance with Zhao, and I'll tell you what, that is the shot of the match, and that is a brilliant timing there for Zhao, and that tells you everything you need to know. Robertson getting the first chance in, he doesn't take it away, he seems like he's got it all covered, but in the end, the Cyclone is about to get unleashed, and one thing about the Hurricane or the Cyclone is he can't control it, and that's exactly why the nickname matches the player, because he could not have done anything better out there. Yes, he was a bit fluky, but, you know, he got lucky and he still wasn't able to keep away Zhao from that table. And as I said beforehand, when Zhao was so close to making those two raids into the middle, well, now he's made that raid into the left corner with a brilliant long shot. I think it's only the second long shot that he has made in the entire match there. Certainly noticeable to me. But if you remember what happened in the previous time he's done that, Robertson certainly would have thought, before that shot was taken on, that he would have had around 95% of a chance of coming back to the table in the remainder of the frame. Well, the remaining 5% certainly proved to be the decisive, because there was a century break to be made from Zhao, the only one in the match. And the only time where you feel like, for me, he was actually the one initiating the chance for himself rather than picking up the pieces from Robertson's mistakes. But this time around, it's going to be a very different scenario, because the position doesn't need that much treatment as it did in the third frame, I think it was. So now, a very different situation, but in relation to the position. But of course, it's still going to benefit Zhao even more, because he's now got 23 points of a lead, which probably matches anything that Robertson has managed to achieve so far in the match. And yeah, he's certainly not going to try and stop here. He's got plenty of raids to try and take above the ping, which, well, two certainly, and then he's got one slightly underneath the ping to be taken into the right corner. For now, the ping itself is going to be a bit of an issue here, probably compromised by those raids, but I feel like, I mean, it's up to Zington at this stage. He can do pretty much whatever he wants in relation to what's happening with the frame and the match. You know, he can try and send the cue ball into the raids straight away, or he can try and just navigate his way through the raids that he's got available. Seems to have spotted one more to be taken into the corner. So, yeah, I mean, one thing that you have to be scared about with Zington is that sometimes you feel like his game is very one-dimensional with, you know, getting into the pack really well, but the other times he's still got a brilliant cue ball control, which sort of transitions nicely in relation to why he's got a brilliant success rate when he's going into the pack. That's because he knows exactly what he wants to do with the cue ball and where he wants to try and place it on the table. And that goes with the same where you have a couple of loose raids as he's done there. Look at that. I mean, he's got a loose raid available, and he manages to kill two birds with one stone there by trying to cannon another raid away from it. A very delicate shot there. Can easily go wrong if you hit it wrong, but if you hit it in incorrectly. But at the same time, when you hit it in the right way, you're going to get yourself a break of 50 plus in pretty much 5 minutes, I would say. So yeah, this could be a very quick ending to the match, but doesn't seem like he's going to be, well, of course, it can't happen in this frame, but I mean, even with a 51 points of a cushion, you feel like this frame is already going to tip massively towards Zhao, and then, of course, he will be down to 6 frames on the bounce, or Zhao in the semi-final of the Shanghai Masters for the second year in a row, and it could, of course, be very much the same lineup. Remember, he was up against the champion, the reigning champion of Shanghai Masters. Let's say the reigning champion of Zhao. I mean, if he continues to play like this, you know, you've got Zhensheng Open, which is going to be very much from where he's from. You may have to rename that one to Zhao Open if he does continue to be setting up the pace, not just from the other part of the world outside the UK, but on the format of anyone in the sport. He is going to be certainly approaching the world #1 spot. No matter what Robertson and Chomp are going to be doing, he's going to have a massive advantage over those two. Wilson 2 up after 4 frames, but now 3-0. Can't see the same happening here. Nah, it's, well, I was going to say nah, but then I seen that the cue ball was going to be sent in the wrong way. Of course, Zhao couldn't see that one. And yeah, he's now got himself through to a gap of 72, I think it is, with the points sourcing itself out. So he's still got a chance to try as he wins the frame now, no doubt about it. I mean, Robertson needs 2 snookers and he's got plenty of reds to try and make his way through. And also Zhao is still at the table, looking to try and cut the red into the corner. He's done that now, and he's still looking to try and make it another break of 80 plus. And, well, battering probably is going to be an understatement. Robertson has scored 64 points in 5 frames. Zhao has scored 73 in the current frame alone. That tells you everything you need to know about dominance in snooker. But sometimes, you know, could have been a very, very different story had the second shot. By the way, the first shot of the match from Robertson was an absolute cracker. You're not going to get a better shot than this in the entire tournament. But then the second one, missing out on that black with a very marginal mistake, hasn't scored a point since then until the frame number 3. And all of a sudden, he finds himself in a position of, you know, a massive struggle here. And he's going to have to try and fight back in frames number 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'll be very surprised if he gets to frame number 10 as well. For now then, wouldn't be at all surprised if there is another century in the making, although the cue ball has been overplayed here. But he's still going to be approaching the red at a vast pace of not, and still just drops that one in carefully. He's now going to get himself lined up for the black to be taken. 95 points on the break, 102 with the black, and still going for a potential 137 of a clearance, which, I mean, it'll be absolutely astonishing with you know, the 3 reds and the way they were positioned, the paint being out of position and covering those reds. But simply lovely there from Zhao, just making, you know, it work for himself. Sometimes making the simple things to be working out perfectly well, but not quite, trying to be a little bit greedy with that pocket. It's still going to be a century break of 102 points. He's not going to be able to get too close to the total clearance, but he can't get any closer than this to winning the match in style. Robertson and Zhao have got such a contrasting look there. Well, both of them are not going to be smiling and laughing, but I felt like one of them is probably thinking about, have I got their flight home? And, well, he might want to stay for the China Open there, Robertson. I'm not sure about that, but with it being just a week away. But ultimately, it doesn't seem like he's going to have plenty of more action in the Shanghai Masters here, because now he finds himself being 5-0 behind. Can he try and at least make a bit of a Ding Zhuyi comeback like it was yesterday? Ding made 2 back-to-back centuries at that stage and, you know, managed to get the gap down from 5-0 to 5-2. And this time around, he's still going to be very much the same mission out there as Zhao wins the first 5 frames of the match in 2 consecutive matches for him. And he's now going to be only 70 points or so away from making it the clash with either Mark Williams or Karen Wilson in the semi-final stage. Whether that would be the case or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But Williams, by the way, I mean, absolutely flying through the gears. I mean, he was 3-1 down with a really good break of 84 points from Karen Wilson. But now, after Wilson scoring 14 points, it is now the Welsh potting machine very much on the rise here, being the firm favourite to win the frame. And yeah, keep an eye on that one as well, as Robertson is getting ready for his break-off. I mean, once again, 80.6 as the average break is absolutely ridiculous there for Zhao. So if you take every single one of his breaks, that you could say he's had 80 points scored every single time out there, which is incredible. And 33 points for Robertson probably doesn't tell you the whole picture, because I'm pretty sure that's the only break that he's had above 10 points, which is baffling, you have to say. And, well, it's now about to be another rack of the red balls, 6 colours, the cue ball. And, well, Neil Robertson is about to get his guaranteed shot of the frame. And from what we've seen beforehand, don't take that shot for granted, because you may still find out this one to be the last shot of the invitational tournaments for a while there for you, because then we're going to be very much going for that ranking 2 there of China Open, Wuhan Open, English Open, British Open, and many more tournaments yet to come, with the likes of Shenzhen being the replacement of the Xi'an Grand Prix. And with China Open replacing Saudi Arabia there, according to the CEO of WPBSA, I'm pretty sure it is, Jason Ferguson. He's not the chairman of the WST, he's the very much lead of WPBSA out there. But anyway, the lead of this match certainly has been the man from China, Zhao, He now finds himself in a position of being 5 frames to nil clear. And a decent break-off shot there from Robertson, but is he going to be good enough to keep Zhao quiet? Once again, just like he was in that 3rd frame. In the 5th frame, he's had one brilliant long-range shot when Robertson thought he might have actually got away with that one, but in the end, that wasn't the case. And the century followed it up with, and once again, it's a brilliant long-range shot. Now the cue ball has got a little bit too much pace there for my liking. Let's see if Zhao is still going to be content with that one. I'll tell you what, he's got every reason to be, because you felt like the cue ball was going to be with a very tight line in relation to the brown and the yellow, but look at how well he manages to judge the spin of the cue ball. You know, just about right amount of power so that he's going to be sort of getting that cue ball halfway there and then kicking that spin with plenty of topspin so that he goes around those 2 reds and the black, trying to make it a bit of a diagonal line towards the right side cushion, now potting the brown into the middle. So then once again, a mid-range shot for him to be taking on. And for a second there, I thought he was playing for the black, but of course, even he's not going to be playing for the black when he's going to be surrounded by 3 reds. So that was a strategic decision to try and get himself lined up for the pink. Probably, you have to say, might seem as a challenge to Zhao, but you'd have to say this is the most difficult position of anything that we've seen for him. I think Robertson had the more difficult position to him in one of the frames. And yeah, 12 points right now for Zhao. He needs around 60 more, and then it is going to be a whitewash. Only the 2nd of the entire tournament. And so if you talk about the first one, that was certainly the first match of the entire tournament. Chris Wakelin against the Chinese wildcard. You know, it was a very dominant performance. And Wakelin was able to set himself up with a clash with Mark Williams, which he was unable to be on top of at the end of it. For now then, probably the longest part of the entire break there of Zhao is the referee trying to squeeze that pink in towards the pack of reds and underneath them. So then just trying to carefully go for that red. And this time around, of course, not having the black and the pink makes the life of Zhao even more difficult. And now having to just find himself to be playing perfect positional shots there on the blue. And for now, he's just about going to be top side of it. So getting that cue ball to be bouncing off the left side, off the right side cushions of the table. And it does seem like he's going to make another dent in trying to go for the pink spot to return back into its original surroundings. As he takes that red away into the left corner, still going to find himself with the top side of a blue to be taking on now. And now 19 points clear, making this look very easy indeed there. So it's an interesting quest there for Zhao, because now you feel like he's not really going to be in a position where he's going to send a cue ball into those reds, because he's going to have to put a lot more control and concentration into being perfectly lined up for those reds, and therefore he's going to have to go for the reds surrounding the black there. And look at that, I thought he was going to have to try and take those 2 reds away from each other there, but ultimately Zhao is going to be 2 steps ahead of you, and he's managed to clear 2 reds with a single shot there, allow the black now to be potable into the left part of the table, which is going to do him nicely here with 32 points of a lead. And Robertson might just have to settle for probably the biggest defeat points-wise in his life. I can't really think of him scoring 64 points in 6 frames, getting whitewashed. I mean, and he's only 30 points away from that. Probably would have been one freaky match where he would have scored like 30 points across 6 frames there when he was playing against Brian O'Sullivan in 13. But, I mean, not really 13, because I think Ronnie missed out on the entire season in 2013 before eventually winning the Worlds by an absolute margin of a rocket ship out there. But meanwhile, Zhao is going to keep on scoring those good points for himself. Now, 48 points after, 48 I should say, after, you know, taking 7 reds away, still having 8 of them ahead of himself here. And, well, I mean, he's played a bit of a marginal shot here and having to go for a bit of a swerve now. Not sure if he can see enough of that red, so it may not be over for Robertson just yet here. But although one thing you can say for certain is that Zhao is going to try and go for the reds into the left corner. He's got absolutely nothing to worry about now, even if he does miss out on the red. But miss out on the red has not really been a part of his vocabulary today. It's a brilliant cut once again. He's managed to take that cue ball on a journey on 4 cushions, and he manages to put himself in a position of still having the colour to play. Whether he's going to be able to find a red after it is going to be a bit of another variable there in the making, but he's managed to sort out so many equations here today that you wouldn't be surprised that he puts this one past him as well. For now, plenty of backspin there on the cue ball, going on around the journey, around the globe there, on 2 cushions only, but still making a massive difference to the cue ball positioning. Having to go for a very tight line on the red though, and well, once again, striking that one absolutely beautifully into the heart of the pocket, despite having pretty much half of the pocket to aim at, and barely enough of the width of the red ball to squeeze that one in without touching the jaws. Once again, a little bit far away from the black, but he absolutely thrashes that one home, and that surely is going to be the winning shot there, since he has allowed himself to have a couple more of the easy reds, and 59 points clear. The average break of 80 points doesn't seem like he's going to be in any sort of danger, because now, after he's done all the hard work, he's got one more potential difficulty of a red to be taken into the left middle, but as he's been doing throughout the entire match, he makes that look super easy. And now just 1 or 2 shots away from a frame ball. 67 points clear, 67 points at the table. So then, Neil Robertson is going to have to make it, I think, 0 points to be scored in the second mini session. And yeah, there's been at least, well, there's been 1 frame where he scored 1 point. There was another 3 frames, I should say, including this one, where he didn't score a single point. So, you know, the 64 points that he scored came just in 2 of those frames there. And you have to say, it has been the most dominant that we have seen Zhao Xingtong ever since winning that World Championship crown. Because, I mean, I know he's had a 10-2 win against John Higgins, but you still have to say this probably tops it up a little bit, because against Neil Robertson, the man higher rated than him on the rankings, the world number 2, certainly saying that he's going to try and make it the world number 1 there, when Trump is going to inevitably lose those 500,000 worth of ranking points and try and challenge him at the newly presented China Open. But for now, it does seem like we live in the world of snooker of Zhao Xingtong here, as he now gets another red in towards the middle, gets himself through to a break of 91 points out there. So still looking at a potential opportunity of going for the pink now. Into the right corner, cuts that one in very, very nicely indeed. And now gets himself through to a chance of 97 points to be scored. So then, still 1 more red that you will need the extension for at least. But after that, you'll be a race towards the century break. And the race of Neil Robertson has been run here at the Shanghai Masters. Once again, can't quite make it into the semi-final lineup, despite looking quite promising in the first round. And, well, I mean, I say quite promising in the second round. I mean, he did lose to Trump last season, so I wouldn't say he did look too promising out there. But in the end, he wasn't even able to take 2 frames away. But, ooh, that's disappointing there for Zhao Xingtong. Unfortunately, he's unable to make it the 3rd century break. But Robertson will have plenty of warm words to say about the performance of Zhao Xingtong. But I'm pretty sure he knows about it anyway. Zhao Xingtong, the player from China, he's going to make it. A Chinese player into the semi-finals. Could we finally see the first one to be in the final for the first time since 9 years ago? Well, if you talk about this performance, then I say there's nothing that's going to stop him from doing that. When Watchalong puts it on fire, watch out. Well, the thing about it is that he only had 3 of those long reds to be taken in the entire match, but still managed to do it super, super well. And yeah, absolutely thrashed the opposition here of Neil Robertson. Mark Williams still looking to try and make it 3 frames on the bounce for himself to set up that clash with Zhao Xingtong. But one thing is for certain, on a Friday morning, we will see a lot more of Zhao Xingtong, and we guarantee to see at least 10 more frames out there if there is to be another whitewash one way or another. Now just waiting to see who's going to join Zhao Xingtong in that semi-final clash. Thank you very much for everyone tuning in. Feel free to be back for the afternoon session in Europe, for the evening session in China of the World Championship Revenge for Sean Murphy to be loading or a potential deja vu there for Weezer as he's looking to get himself through to the semi-final of his whole tournament here at the Shanghai Masters. Stay tuned in. Thank you very much for tuning in here to the first stream, which allows him to certainly entertain us, and Neil Robertson will have to come back stronger at the China Open to try and defend his title a little bit better there. Speak to you soon. Thanks again for support, and stay tuned in for the 12:30 today. In just a couple of hours' time, Shaun Murphy against Weezer, back on the main arena of the World Snooker Tour.